wanting to be prepared, wanting to be ready, wanting to have clean food, because I 100% believe that having clean food makes a difference to how well we are as people, and whether or not we need to consume, a bucket load of drugs to, because I've got a headache or I've got this or I've got that. 100% believe that food is a huge contributor, to the
Sure.
point that
Yeah.
I did my own experiment on myself, testing this theory. So I found out like sort of 6+ years ago that I was a non-celiac gluten sensitive, which basically means I wasn't a celiac, but I couldn't have foods that had gluten in it.
Sure.
And so I went, okay, I'll just have gluten-free food. That's fine. But that didn't make anything better. I was still unwell. And then I saw this video, this Italian doctor, and he said, women travel from, North America, from Australia, from New Zealand, and they go to Europe and they eat bread and they eat pasta and nothing happens. Nothing happens. They're fine. They're totally fine. And then they go back to their Western country and try and eat the same thing and they become unwell. And he rattled off a bunch of different things, but he said, I think this is because of the way that the wheat, for example, is prepared afterwards and cleaned. It's cleaned with chemicals. And he's like, I actually think all these people that are non-celiac gluten sensitive are so because of chemicals, not gluten. So I did that test on myself and I'm gone back to eating bread now.
This is the Farm Hop Life podcast, a traveling homestead family. I'm Matt DeRocher. Today, my guest is TJ from Life on Milo's farm from the land down under, Queensland, Australia, where
Yes.
the time is tomorrow. She does canning, food preservation, DIY farm projects. She makes sauerkraut, artisan soap, and has a horse called Moose.
Yes.
I watched one of your videos and you called them a big boof head. I thought
Yes.
that was so funny. That was such a funny nickname for him. Oh, you're just a big boof head.
Yeah, that's the that sort of slang word buffhead is quite commonly used in Australia. It's
I
sort of
thought it
like
might be.
yeah, it's sort of saying in a very nice way, maybe you're not that sharp at the moment, or that kind of thing. So you'll often hear someone say, "Oh, you're a buffhead," and that just means like you're being a bit silly or you're a bit daft, so to speak. So yeah,
Sure.
he's definitely a big buffhead.
It's so much better when you say it than I say it. It's
That's because I think it's just a word that we use all the time, right? Like it's probably quite new for you to hear that sort of phrase, but yeah, we use it all
sure.
the time.
Sure. Um I'd like to start with the name of your farm.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how it got its name. I think I have an idea of the name of your farm. So if you could explain that to me, that would be great.
Yeah, so it actually has taken us a long time to come up with a name for our sort of farm and our homestead, and we've been homesteading for quite a long time, probably close to 15 years, I'd say. And
Nice.
initially, when we started, the property that we lived in was a decommissioned military cottage from the local army base,
Mm.
and so, and at the time that we lived there, my dad came and built this really sort of not a typical sort of farm fence. He built sort of this fence that you'd see sort of more around, like big establishments. And so we nicknamed it the compound, and we were like, that doesn't work. That sounds really bad. And then we moved from that property and we stayed in this homestead, and we just couldn't pick a name. Like nothing flowed for us, or the type of homestead we had, or even our background and that kind of thing. So the name Milo's Farm came because our dog passed away a couple of years ago, and he had a genetic heart condition called dilated cardiomyopathy, which we didn't know about. And we've now found out it's quite prevalent because we have Doberman. So we found out it's quite prevalent in the
Mm.
Doberman breed, which is news to me because I've had Dobermans my whole life and I never ever lost one from DCM, and it's basically like quite devastating because the dog cannot even feel that they're unwell, but they're not allowed to run. They're not allowed to do all these things because they've got an enlarged heart and it doesn't beat properly and all this kind of thing. So when he passed away, to sort of pay homage to him, we said, we'll call it Milo's Farm. And that's why we've called it Life on Milo's Farm, because we cremated him. So whenever we plan on moving, which we've been planning on moving for the last 5 years, but when we plan on moving to our bigger property, then we can carry that name with us, because we'll carry him with us all the time as well.
Sure.
So that's where the name came from, Life on Milo's Farm, because it's his farm, and wherever we are is wherever he's going to be with us. So
I like that a lot. That's very nice.
yeah.
And not just because my
I did notice on your thing that it said, homesteaders, and then Milo, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to ask him who Milo is.
Yep, that's my son.
Yeah.
Yep, he's not quite 2 yet, almost.
Almost there. So it's Mother's Day here in Australia. So happy Mother's Day to your wife, partner.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. I don't know if it's the same in the US.
Tomorrow.
But tomorrow. Well, I'm living in the future, remember?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. What's funny about that people don't know how like time zones work is, I remember, I don't know if it was just like trolling, but years ago I saw someone like tweet out, did you know that like Australians or the Japanese or whoever are like a whole day ahead of us? Couldn't they like have warned us about 9/11?
Unfortunately not. It kind of happened at the same time.
Yeah, weird. Actually, they'd find out the next day.
Yeah. Oh, that's bizarre.
So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just did you also get your tattoo? Do you have a tattoo of Milo's dog paw print?
Yep. I don't know if
Very
you can see
nice.
it there.
That's awesome.
So that's his actual paw print when he was like just after his diagnosis, so he was still pretty healthy and that kind of thing. We got just a huge piece of butcher paper and some paint and made him step in the paint and then walk all over the butcher paper. So we had some, full paw prints, some half paw prints, and this one happened to be the one that looked the best. This is the actual size of his paw. He was like a bear.
That's so crazy. It's huge.
Yeah, it's massive. So it takes up quite a lot of real estate on this part of my skin. But yes, that is a in memoriam to him. So I keep him everywhere with me when I go.
That's awesome. Like that. So you said you and your husband have been homesteading for about 15 years already.
Yeah.
How did you get started homesteading?
I think it's kind of twofold. So it's a little bit, I think it missed a generation. So my parents are first generation. I'm first generation Australian. My parents are migrants from Eastern Europe, and my grandparents lived that life. So my grandparents lived in a village, and they had farm animals and a garden, and they had all that. That's how they sort of had to live, like that very rural lifestyle. And then my parents moved to Australia, and suddenly everything became convenience, because you can just click a few buttons or go down to the store and you can get everything. So my parents did a little bit of that, not as much, and then they started sort of moving out towards not doing sort of those traditional skills, I suppose you could say. And I think that was always something that was just inside, for both of us, something that drove both of us. So when we moved to Queensland, because we're originally from Victoria, which is in the south, when we moved to Queensland, we straight away bought, sort of after about a year or so, we bought our first property, which was a 4-acre homestead. And we were like, yeah, we're going to do this, well, let's give this a go. And so that's how we started. So it was a little bit of, it's not like, typical sort of, that farming was in our blood or anything like that. I definitely think like that concept of homesteading, more of that self-sufficiency and that kind of lifestyle and doing things for yourself, that was something that was more within us. Sure. And we just started slowly. Like it's not like we knew, we didn't come into doing it knowing what we were doing. So it was a little bit of trial and error sometimes, and learning about, because the environment is totally different between the Victoria and Queensland as well. The weather's totally different, the critters are totally different, the snakes are totally different, and that kind of thing. So it was just a huge learning curve, but we loved it, and we were able to move on to the property and sort of start going back to that basics, like back to what our grandparents had done, when they were overseas, and sort of that's when then I started getting into like canning and making like the sauerkrauts and this, that, and doing breads and cheeses and that kind of thing. So it was sort of like a little bit of that, something that we always felt was inside that we wanted to do, and something that was also part of our upbringing, because obviously we would have been spending time with our grandparents and raised by our grandparents at different points in time. So it's not like we were not exposed to that kind of stuff. And that's basically how we started.
Was it like a slow kind of entry into it, or was there like something happened where like, I want to grow more of my own food because blank?
I don't think so. I think we've always just been a little bit, I suppose you could say different. Like we never really, even when we lived in a suburban property and lived closer to things, we still maintained that same way of doing things. Like if I wouldn't go to the store every single day to buy something, I'd sort of be like, okay, well, I don't want to go for a month, so I'm going to make sure I stockpile. I'm going to make sure I have all this stuff. And
Sure.
generally, like, we've never had anything like that to trigger the need to do that. It was actually probably when we moved onto the homestead, because this is a subtropical climate, so we have wet seasons in the summer. And I thanked my lucky stars that my husband calls me a prepper, but I wouldn't say I'm a prepper in that sense. But he was away. He was working in the mines at the time, and we had a flood, and I got flooded in. I was there by myself, and no one was there. Like, no, my husband wasn't there. My parents still live in Victoria, so it's not like my dad could come and help. No family up here. And it was a major flood. It was huge. I mean, it was everywhere. There was roads were cut off, floodwaters that were usually, creeks and streams that were like 1 to 2 meters high were sort of 16 meters high. They were flooding over roads. Bridges that were not supposed to flood were being flooded, and I was left home with no power,
Wow.
nothing. So, like, even at this property and our other homestead, we were only connected to electricity. So our water, sewage, and a grease trap were all on the property. So suddenly I was there by myself, and this was within the first 6 months of moving into that property, and I was like, crap, what am I going to do? I've got no electricity. I've got no running water. I can't charge my phone. What am I going to do? So that sort of proved to me how resilient you can be when you have to be. Like, I would go and turn the car on and put my phone charger in and charge my phone just so I had, something for emergencies. And what actually happened was the electricity pole had gone down in front of my property. So there was live wire in my property. I couldn't go out. We were flooded. The whole property was flooded. I couldn't even if I wanted to get out, I couldn't get out. So I was basically just eating canned goods and noodles and that kind of stuff. And I was basically, because so we have a water pump connected to water tanks, but I couldn't use the water tanks because the water pump was driven by electricity, not solar. So I was basically putting a like a container out to catch the rainwater, to boil water to make noodles or to make pasta or whatever it might have been. And so probably that was the time I went, yeah, thank goodness you are a bit of a prepper, stockpiler person, because you just survived 4 or 5 days with no running water, no bathroom facilities, no electricity, and you're fine. You didn't go hungry, nothing happened to you, you're totally fine. So
That
that
is
just,
wild.
yeah. And it's also probably scarier when you're doing it by yourself. Like, I think it's different if my husband was there, then I'd have a little bit more confidence, because then he could do something and I could do something. But in this particular scenario, I couldn't even call anybody. Like, the police and the SES, it's called the SES, they're called the State Emergency Service, and they basically run by volunteers. But anytime there's a like a tree down over the road or someone needs to be rescued, the SES come and help. So the SES couldn't get to me, the fire brigade couldn't get to me, the police couldn't get to me, nobody could get to me. And it wasn't just me, it was everyone that lived in that area. So that sort of just cemented to me like having to be ready and having to be prepared, because you never know what could happen at any given time. And I've just continued to live that way and continued to be prepared in that way.
Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah.
Why does it seem like that Australia is like the land of extremes? Like, it's either way too hot, or it's flooded, or they got like poisonous everything, venomous everything. It just seems crazy to me that it's such like everything's just out to kill you.
Yeah, and I have had quite a lot of that come from people, and they say, how do you do it? And like, you've just got to have your wits about you, like, you've just got to be careful. You've got to always make sure, you don't walk around, in your sandals. Make sure you've got boots on, and that you've got thick pants on, so if a snake does come and bite you, make sure you've got multiple kits around. Make sure you've got a shovel, because maybe you won't be able to run off into your gun safe to get your gun, so you're going to need a shovel to kill a snake. Different things like that. So I suppose it's being aware of the threat and the multiple threats that could happen, and preparing for all of that, whether it's having extra sand for sandbagging for flooding, or whether it's having a particular paddock or pasture on your property that's slightly higher ground, so you can move things to that higher ground, maybe having a shed or something that's slightly away from the rest of the house, so that if, a disaster is coming, you've got a stockpile of things, So, and I think that's, I mean, it's probably like this, in the States as well, but I suppose that when you live in those kinds of areas, you just get used to understanding what the issues are, and just being prepared for them, so to speak. So same as, I mean, what's a scary snake in America? Like a rattlesnake. Like, I suppose people that live in areas where there's lots of rattlesnakes, they would have particular plans and know what to do. And
Sure.
Same as here. Like, it's sort of, if it's a solid color snake, probably best not to touch it. If it's a diamond colored snake, maybe that's okay to touch. If it's a spider and it's small, it's probably dangerous. Not the big fat hairy ones. They're actually good for eating bugs and that kind of thing. So I think it's just a matter of understanding your threats and understanding your environment, and not being scared, because being scared is where you make mistakes and get yourself into strife. So
yeah, and the best way to not be scared is to be prepared, I guess.
To be prepared. So maybe I am a bit of a prepper. My husband says, you're such a... And I'm like, no, I'm a stockpiler. I'm a stockpiler.
That's not a dirty word from the like the groups that I'm a part of. Like, prepping's not a bad word. It just means that I want to keep living. And
correct.
So I don't want the inconveniences, no matter how minor or major, to pose like a threat on my life or my family's life. So I'm gonna have
be
certain
ready.
things in order. Yeah, be ready.
Yeah. And it's so funny you said that, because like, obviously when all these stuff started happening around the world, my husband said it was probably about a week or two before everything sort of went really pear-shaped, and he said, are we good? Like, are we good? Do we need anything? And I just opened this one cupboard, and there was like toilet paper and wet wipes and paper towels and other things that I couldn't store in the kitchen. I was like, we're good, buddy. Like, we actually don't have to go to the shops for 12 months. And he's like, perfect.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So I pride myself on that. That's a good skill to have.
You should be proud. 12 months, that's awesome.
12 months, yeah.
So you kind of already answered the next question. Like, what motivates you to grow your own food? Just wanting to survive.
Wanting to
be prepared.
Wanting to be prepared, wanting to have clean food, wanting to have access to clean food.
That's important.
My grandmother is 95 years old, and she, touch wood, has never, ever, ever, other than her knee replacement surgery, has never been to the hospital, has never gone to the doctors, other than for like maybe, like a flu, or, she's got a bit of a migraine or something. Like, she doesn't drink pain medicine. She doesn't drink, not even paracetamol. She cannot tolerate medicine. And I'm convinced that it's all because of food, because she cooks the traditional way. So she doesn't have anything that's, tinned or canned, like in terms of like commercially tinned. She doesn't use any preservatives or anything like that. Everything that she has, food that's long storage food, is food that's come from her garden, that she's canned, that she's prepared, whether it's by pickling or like sauerkraut, doing it that way. And her own milk, like when we first moved to the homestead, she was like, are you going to get me a goat? And I was like, no, why? She's like, I want to milk it to make cheese and milk. And I was like, well, you can do that, but I don't have the time. But
grandma,
yeah, she's hilarious. But she's, no kidding, and you wouldn't give her more than 65. She is amazing, and she is my inspiration, because her backyard was not like a backyard for kids, where you can run around and play. Her backyard was fruit trees, vegetables, seasonal vegetables, whatever was available. And that to me was more important than having space to, run around and whatever. If you want to run around, you can go to the park that's behind, but grandma's little plot of land had enough food there for all of us. So that's why I grow my own veggies. That's why I like having my own access to my own vegetable garden, because, a bit of everything, a bit of, wanting to be prepared, wanting to be ready, wanting to have clean food, because I 100% believe that having clean food makes a difference to how well we are as people, and whether or not we need to consume, a bucket load of drugs to, because I've got a headache or I've got this or I've got that. 100% believe that food is a huge contributor, to the point that I actually did my own experiment on myself, testing this theory. So I found out like sort of 6+ years ago that I was a non-celiac gluten sensitive, which basically means I wasn't a celiac, but I couldn't have foods that had gluten in it. And so I went, okay, I'll just have gluten-free food. That's fine. But that didn't make anything better. I was still unwell. And then I saw this video, this Italian doctor, and he said, women travel from, North America, from Australia, from New Zealand, and they go to Europe and they eat bread and they eat pasta and nothing happens. Nothing happens. They're fine. They're totally fine. And then they go back to their Western country and try and eat the same thing and they become unwell. And he rattled off a bunch of different things, but he said, I think this is because of the way that the wheat, for example, is prepared afterwards and cleaned. It's cleaned with chemicals. And he's like, I actually think all these people that are non-celiac gluten sensitive are so because of chemicals, not gluten. So I did that test on myself, and I've gone back to eating bread now, and I've gone back to eating pasta that I make myself.
Super interesting. Wow.
Yeah, massive change. Like I've gone from I couldn't eat, a loaf of bread, to now I make my own sourdough, which I've always had sourdough starter, but I make my own sourdough. I make my own fresh egg noodles. I just have to use a particular flour. So I use French flour, because France is quite strict in their regulation of like the chemicals that are sprayed on crops. And so I started doing that, and I can eat that food with no issue. So I'm just going to probably in the next few weeks actually get another allergy test done with an immunologist to double check, to make sure it's not doing anything internally. But to me, that proved like it was more of a chemical thing. So if we can remove the chemicals from the food that we eat, and have it as clean and natural as possible, then I think that overall, all these little ailments that we have and little allergies and this, that, and the other that might be impacting our lives, we can potentially get rid of them without needing, other medical interventions. So that's kind of sort of why food is so important to me, because it's not just a matter of, like I said before, the readiness and all that kind of stuff, but I think our overall longevity and health is greatly impacted by that, and how clean our food is.
That's crazy. That's pretty cool that you'd like kind of take that upon yourself, do your like own research and like, okay, I'm feeling pretty crummy. Let me try eating cleaner food, see what happens. And I'm like, wow, I feel pretty good. And just that's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Someone should write a paper on you.
It was a pretty good experiment. And like I even went to the doctor and told him like, this is what I've done. And, can I keep eating this stuff? Like it's not impacting me. He's like, well, if you feel fine, go for it. So, it just, for me, just firms up really like the importance of everybody having to have that skill or learning that skill or knowing that skill of being able to cook for yourself and rely on yourself and your skills. I think that that's really important.
Your current homestead that you have, what kind of let's say techniques, practices, or like methods do you have going on there? Like, do you run like chickens ahead of like your garden to like compost it, or like kind of have them scratch and till the soil, anything like that?
Yeah, we do. So we have chooks, ducks, and geese currently. We've got our horse.
What do you call them?
Chooks.
Chooks? They're called chooks?
Yeah. If you ever hear an Aussie person say chook, it's for a chicken, or roast chicken or fresh chicken. So yeah, we have chooks, geese, and ducks, Muscovy ducks. I
Okay.
love the eggs from Muscovy ducks. I think that they are phenomenal, and they're so good in baked goods, and just generally, like, they're so healthy for you. So that basically that's what we do. We're just changing up their little house at the moment, and we're making a chicken
Okay.
tractor for them, so we can move them around the property, because there's a few spots where we've got some mosquitoes and different things like that that have, because of the rains, that are sort of
Mm-hmm.
infesting. So we want to get the birds out there. But otherwise, they come into the the garden, and they scratch away. We let them go in there for a couple of days, and then when they're sort of fertilized and done everything, I can go in there and mulch and clean up as needed. Same with the horse, though. All his sort of droppings and things, I use them in the garden. I don't discriminate whether it's fresh or dry. I just use it as is, and I've never had any issue in the garden in terms of seeds burning or the manure being too hot.
Sure.
Never had any of those issues. So
With horse manure specifically.
with horse manure specifically, yeah. So we do have down the road, one of our neighbours has, quite a lot of cow manure free for us, and sometimes I use that. We do make our own biochar as well for our
Okay.
property. So we use biochar basically in everything, if whether we're doing the garden or whether we're planting some new trees or shrubs or whatever it might be. We have that, and we kind of have, I think it's called Paradise Paddock. I think it's called Paris Paddock. It's basically a rotational system for rotating your horse through different paddocks to make sure that they're not
Okay.
standing in one spot and eating. But this particular setup, because of the way our property is set up, it forces him, like, the water stays in one area and it forces him to walk all the way around. So it
Mm.
encourages him, number one, to have more exercise. Number two, he's out there fertilizing different areas where he's leaving his droppings, but also he's then walking back. So it's good for the horse as well in terms of, like, mental stimulation and getting them to think about different things. Like, oh, wait a minute, I want to drink, I'm going to have to go back. But also helps fertilize the other paddocks and doesn't wear them out too much with him grazing on them. And then also, because I can have him in one space, I can have the chooks and ducks and geese in another space. So that's what we do at the moment. And we're hoping to eventually, as I said, we've been wanting to move for quite a few years, but once we get onto our bigger property, then we'll introduce other livestock, cows, pigs, goats, that kind of thing, and get more into being, because I don't feel that we're fully sustainable at this point in time. Like, we're probably,
Sure.
like, let's say 80%, but I would like to be fully off grid, and fully self-sufficient at some point. And I think that that's probably going to happen in the next couple of years. We're sort of starting to work towards that over the
That'd
next
be
couple of years.
fantastic.
Yeah,
That'd
yeah,
be, I
it is.
mean, that last closing that, like, the 80% or whatever, like, not that bad, but closing that last 20% gap, that seems like the hardest.
I agree, and I think it's because, especially like when you move from, let's say, like, a suburban area to, like, a semi-rural or rural area, you try and find, especially when you're transitioning to that life, I feel like you try and find things that make it easier. So for example, both of our properties they have to be connected to electricity because the electricity poles run past the property. It's this stupid thing that the government says, well, if electricity runs past your property, you have to have an electricity pole and you have to pay for electricity. It's dumb. But
I
water,
think
we
we have
collect our
something similar. Yeah.
yeah. So, but water, we collect our own rainwater, and that's all we use. And sewage, we
Oh,
have
that's not
sewage
illegal
tanks.
there?
No, 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 no.
I'm
You
I'm
can,
kidding.
and
It's illegal some places here.
is it really? I want.
Like Oregon, Portland, Oregon, I think it's illegal to collect your own rainwater.
So it's funny you say that, because I wondered. I watch a few American homesteaders and people that, like, live off grid on
Hmm.
YouTube, and a few of them, like, I find it funny. I don't mean to laugh, but they're like, "Oh, we put these new tanks and we're collecting the water," and they get so excited because they're doing this thing, and I'm like, we do that all the time. Like, but I didn't actually realize that in some states it's not permitted, which I sort of learnt, much later, because I was like, why are they getting so excited? You're just collecting water. It's free. It's water. Like, what,
That's
nothing's going to
funny.
happen. So, but yeah, so we collect all our own water. That's all we use. That's all we drink. That's used in the toilets, in the shower, like, everywhere. And it's super clean.
Do you have a well, or do you even bother
No,
having a well or hooked up to
no,
city
no.
water? Is that even an option where you are? City water?
This particular area that we are, there's for example, they're building like a new estate and they're trying to make it like premium acreage properties, and they're connecting those properties up to town water. But where we are, we're considered the older part of town. We will never get connected to town water. So you
Okay.
do, like if you're in a suburban area, you'll automatically be connected to town water and town sewage. But where we are, we're only connected to electricity. So obviously you've got to put a lot more effort into caring for your sewage tanks and not using harsh chemicals and all that kind of stuff. There's a running joke: when a hen dies, if one of your chooks dies, just lift lift your sewage and chuck it in there, because it'll help decompose and help create good bacteria in your sewage tanks. So different things like that is the way that we have to live out here, because we're not connected to other things. So that's why, I mean, going fully off grid to me will be like, okay, we can still just press a button and the light will turn on, or we can just press a button and your laptop will turn on, or your dishwasher can turn on. Going fully off grid, it'll be different, because now it'll be like, okay, we've got X amount of battery storage, or we can only collect so much sun energy today, that kind of thing. So I think it's a natural progression, and I think it requires not only just a physical change in the way you live your life, but I think probably also a little bit of that mental change. You need to be prepared for the fact that if you are completely off grid, you are totally reliant on yourself, and sometimes that can be a little bit daunting, because you think, do I have the energy to do this thing today? Do I have the energy to maintain this device? Do I have the energy to be involved in this thing? So I think that can make a huge difference as well on how quick you can adopt that lifestyle. But I think that we're ready for it. I think that after all the floods and everything we've been through, there's been many times where we've not had power and we've survived. So I think that we're ready for it. Yeah.
Nice. I wanted to just come back to a comment that you made a little while ago about rotating your horse around. That's very mindful of the property, like of the land, to take care of it in that manner, so that I guess a couple of things, like the stimulation for the horse, and then so that it's not overgrazed, and rotating the paddocks, which just seems to make sense. And I just never thought about it like rotating paddocks for a horse. Like for livestock, that makes sense, but I've never thought about it for a horse, just because where I'm at in Montana, people just they're like lawn ornaments here. Like people don't really I know it's so sad. They're just I feel like they're, they kind of have the mentality, well, I live in Montana, so I might as well have a horse. And then they just never do anything with them. They're just out in the pasture all day, all night.
They don't get ridden. They don't get, yeah.
They'd be lucky if they got their hooves trimmed, kind of.
Yeah, and that's quite sad. Like my horse he's a Clydesdale, 3/4 Clydesdale. So when I got him, number one, I got him because I like the breed and I like the style of horse that they are, and he's a quarter horse. So he's definitely got that working mentality and breeding in him already. But
Sure.
that was my other thing in the background, because I thought, what happens if we move? Because we want to move to 1,000 acres, right? And in my head, I was like, what happens if we move to 1,000 acres and there's no diesel, or it takes us an hour to get into town and we can't get diesel for the machine, or something happens with the machine, a hydraulic hose breaks and we have to order it online because we can't get it anywhere else. What are we going to do if we need to pull something or take something? So my horse hasn't been broken to carriage yet in terms of being able to pull something behind him. But a friend of mine is going to be helping me do that with him, because eventually I would like to be able to say, oh, hey, we've got a gigantic log to move. Let's just hook it up to him and drag it along. He's a Clydesdale. He's got the strength to do it. You know what I mean? So I think that when you move to a homestead, or when you start sort of that homesteading life in earnest and you're doing it all the time, I think you need to be a little bit more resourceful with everything that you have. Like you can't just be like, oh, I'm going to have this horse and I'm just going to ride him, or I'm going to have, like what you said, a paddock ornament. What good does that do you? If something happens, or if you have a weather event and something goes wrong, and you now have this animal that's reliant on you, that cannot do anything else and cannot think. Not that animals can think for themselves, but do you know what I mean? Like that they're not exposed to other things, so that you can You don't have to think, oh my God, this horse has never been touched rain, he's going to freak out, or has never been out of his own paddock, so he's not going to know about the sounds of trucks and machines and stuff. He's going to be terrified.
Right.
And I think just as much as we have to be resilient, our animals have to be resilient and desensitized and all that kind of thing to the lifestyle that we live. So I don't want my horse to just be this, yeah, he's beautiful and I love riding him and all that kind of stuff. But I want, if shit hit the fan, to put the words nicely, I want to be able to turn around and say, okay, I can use that horse for something. He can help pull a log. He can help hold on to something. He can help,
Sure.
in some way. And I think that's why it's also important in getting that exposure to him, in moving him around the property, and getting him to other areas within the property, and getting him to learn about as well, okay, now you're in this paddock and you're going to be really far away from us. Now you're in this paddock, you're going to be a little bit closer to us. Now you're in this paddock on this side, there's a road there, there's going to be trucks going past or whatever it might be. So it's I think it's multifold. You know what I mean? You can't just,
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
you can just have a horse and just ride it and that's all you do with it. But to me, that's then someone that's just living on an acreage property because they want to say, oh, I've got 2 acres and I live on an acreage property. It's different to saying I live on, this property and I'm self-sufficient and I can do all these different things and I can manage myself in the best way. Do you get what I mean?
Oh, yeah, definitely. A
Yeah.
friend of mine just picked up last this weekend, something like that. She just picked up 2 draft horses and recently went to farm estate sale type of thing and picked up tons of old equipment in case stuff doesn't work. But
Yeah.
you also bring up a good point on exposing the horse, which is it could be a valuable tool. You
Yeah.
know, let's take for example the horses are near the at the properties near me, right? They just stand there. They're like, oh, my car doesn't work. So, or nobody's cars work, whatever. We get hit by an EMP, something's totally not
Yeah.
going to, but whatever. Let's just play along.
Yeah.
You get hit by an EMP. Oh, I'll just ride my horse around. Well, have you
Yeah.
ever ridden your horse before? Has your horse ever been on pavement before? Has it left that property? Has it what's it going to do? If it does see a truck or a
That's right.
tractor or gets spooked by something and it just
Something,
takes off
anything. Yeah.
running,
Yeah.
has it even had a saddle on it?
Mm-hmm.
Has it been prepared to have a harness on it to move that log or debris
Yeah.
or whatever? No? Okay,
Yeah.
well then your horse is more of a liability. And
That's right. Yeah. Yep.
so
That's
no, that
exactly
totally
right.
makes sense.
Even with dogs, like we've got 2 Dobermans and a Staffy, and they're good dogs, and they'll come up and give you a cuddle and a kiss and lick you all over the face, and you can give them a pat. But the little Staffy particularly, she's very clever. She came from a family that sort of, there was a little bit of trauma and that kind of thing. So anyway, she came to our place and didn't have a lot of confidence. And so my whole goal has been building up her confidence, because if I go outside at 9 o'clock at night after the rain, there's likely going to be a snake. There's likely going to be a snake, a brown snake, a whip snake, a green tree snake, or a carpet python, or a red belly black, right? So out
I
of
like how
those,
you just
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
it could be
So
yeah, it could be this,
could be
this,
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 could be
this,
this, could
this,
be this.
this.
And the thing is, if I'm walking around at night and it's dark and my little torch isn't working, or it's dim or whatever it might be, and that snake walks past me, or I'm going to the horse's yard and the snake goes past me, I do not want to think, oh my God, wait here, snake. I'm going to go and get my, whatever, shovel, shotgun, whatever. You just don't move and come back. So I want her to be able to wait a minute, this is in front of me. This is not supposed to be here. Get it. She's not going to die from it. She's going to kill it, most likely. And I'm not
Sure.
saying I want to kill the animals, but at the end of the day, if it's my life or its life and that thing could kill me, well, I want to be the one that's on top, So it's about, teaching them as well not to be scared. If there is a critter or something that's coming past, you need to bark at it. You need to sound the alarm. You need to let me know what's going on so that I can deal with it, so to speak. So that's what we try and do. Like on our property, that's what we try and do. We try and make it so that everybody is as resilient as each other and everybody can get involved and live their life in a safe way collaboratively, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. That's I mean, that's a lot of work to raise the skill set of everyone and every animal on the
Yeah,
property. That's a lot of work.
yeah, it is.
People
It's
probably don't think about that. I mean, like, again, if all the training and preparedness, mindset and skill set aren't all being raised up, that one that isn't being raised is now a liability.
That's right. That's right.
Makes
And I
sense.
think that, like we do that all the time. Like, even if something's happening and you're going to the store and you think, "Oh, I don't need anything." Oh, but this item that I can store for a long time, it's on special this week. I'll just pick up a couple of bags. I'll get a little
Oh
bit of
yeah.
extra rice. Oh, I'll get a little bit of extra tinned mushroom or whatever it might be. It's not going to hurt, to have that sitting there. If by any chance nothing happens in 6 months, okay, we'll start using it, rotate it out of your pantry, that kind of thing. But there's no harm in saying, "Oh, you know what? I'll just grab a few things." Like, obviously, when certain things happened that we're currently going through right now, friends of ours they're an older couple and they were away. They were on a cruise ship away, and it was like the beginning of March. And I thought, and they were supposed to be going for like a month all around Australia. And I thought, oh, they're older. By the time they come back from this cruise and this, that, and like, it was weird because I was supposed to land in Sydney and then drive all the way back. It was like bizarre. And I thought, oh, I'll just go to the store and I'll just get them some toilet paper and I'll just get them some tuna and,
Yeah.
tin sardines, just rice, just that kind of stuff, because that was before anything sort of went haywire. And I was like, I'll just get it. And then, I'd, be out in town or whatever. And I'd be like, oh, I'm here. I'll just pick up a little bit more, and not because of anything, not because of anything was happening, but it was more me going, yeah, things seem a bit strange, and I'm just gonna make sure I'm ready. So of course, a few weeks later, shit hit the fan. They're coming back. They managed to get off the cruise in Sydney and drive back, but then they couldn't go to the shops. Suddenly they said, no one can go to the shops. You can only
This
do
was
this. You
early
can only
2020.
early 2020. Yep, can't do
Okay.
this,
So
can't
so
do
you
that.
had your antennas up. Like, this
Uh-huh.
is that's
From
smart.
December,
That's
from December 2019, I had
oh.
my antennas up. And so I had already had stuff going, but I just kept buying a bit more and a bit more and a bit more. And then March came, they suddenly have to dock from this cruise ship in Sydney. Now, Sydney to Brisbane, the main city where we are, like in Queensland, that's about an
Mhm.
8-hour drive in one go. And they had to rent a car that they could leave at Brisbane Airport, so that they could travel up here and not have to return it, obviously, because they didn't want to go on the planes, they didn't want to go on a bus. And they thought, oh shit, what are we going to do? So we called them and we said, are you coming home? Yeah, we're coming home. So I had a bootload of stuff, all of this stuff. And they said, oh my God, what's this? And I said, well, we don't know what's happening. We don't know what's happening. And it's just best that you have this. You're an older couple. If anything happens to you, you're going to have a lot more issue than us. We're a lot younger. So how about you just let us take care of the shopping and that kind of thing, and you don't have to worry about it. And afterwards they said, we don't realize actually how much that meant, to us, just knowing that you had that preparation in the background.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So yeah, I think it just pays off. And I think if you're in that mindset and you live that way all the time, I think you always have that in the back of your head, right? You're always just
Sure.
thinking, oh, I'll just get this, or I'll just get that, or I'll just be prepared a little bit more.
You are definitely, like, your mindset is so far above other people's. Like sometimes they're only worried about themselves. And
Yeah,
then if they're a better person, I guess, they're worried about themselves and their partner. And
yeah,
then them, their partner and their kids, and then their family. So then, like, but you're going, like, out to even, like, your neighbors, and that's awesome. I love that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, everyone knew they could come here and there'd be a garden full of veggies. Worst case scenario, we'll eat, vegetarian chili, like, it's not going to matter. Like, we've got enough stuff here. Or worst case scenario, we'll have to, change one of the layer hens for a meat hen. Like, there's always
Right.
something that you can do to protect yourself and to make sure that you survive. Um, and so, yeah, I just think that that's something, if once you get into the habit of having that all the time in the back of your head, I think it just makes life a lot easier and stress free as well.
Agreed.
Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
So other than being prepared
yeah.
uh, for 12 months, what what have you tried that has worked well? Like a
Mm.
gardening technique, or like, hey, if I plant 3 onions to a pot versus two, I get that just does better, or failing. I don't know.
Yeah. So this is funny because you said not prepared, but this is kind of being prepared. Whenever you start your seeds, always start more. Whenever you're doing any seed starting, and make
Sure.
sure so number one, start more. Don't think, oh, I'm only going to have 2 onions for this whole season. Do
Right.
10, because out of that 10, maybe only 8 germinate. And of that 8, maybe only 5 survive when you transplant them into the garden. So you've already reduced the amount that you have available to you from the way that you started to what you're doing when you're transplanting into your garden. So
Sure.
always just do 10. Or if you wanted to plant 5, do 10, do 20. It doesn't matter, whatever it is. If you have more, you have more. You'll do something
Right.
with it. But that's my tip in terms of seed starting. Always have more than what you think. Always like understand where you are, understand your season, understand your environment, and buy the seeds that are going to be for your environment. Or if you can get saved seeds from someone, get it from someone that lives in your area, because those seeds and those vegetables or fruits, whatever they might be, are already acclimatized to your climate in your area. If
Sure.
my dad, who's in the south of Australia, sends me something up here, number one, it might not germinate and work because the heat's going from a cold environment to a subtropical environment. So, make sure that you get involved, whether it's like a community group, or I mean, these days you can find Facebook groups for everything, right? So
Mm-hmm.
try and get involved in a community group where you can get seeds that are for your area. So that's my two most important things when it comes to starting seeds, and also understanding the temperature of your outside, the temperature of your greenhouse, and the temperature of your soil, because sometimes they don't all match up. So the temperature
Right.
of the soil might be warm, but then the outside air within the greenhouse might be warmer than the air that's actually out of the greenhouse. So you have to be able to understand, because that might actually kill your seeds, or it might make them leggy, or it might create moisture and mold on top of the soil. So try and, make sure that you understand the differences. If it means starting everything inside and putting it on your window ledge in the kitchen, then that's what you do. Or if it means, taking them out every day and getting them acclimatized to the weather before you plant them, that's what you do. So I think that in terms of when it comes to garden and that kind of thing, that is the most important. I think when it comes to like a little bit more broadly, if you're looking at like your raised meats and that kind of thing, you've still kind of got to apply the same process. You've got to understand like whether the grass or the lucerne or hay or whatever it is that you're feeding them is something that's readily available, that it's nutrient dense, that you're not going to have to add additional things to make sure that protein source basically is a viable source that's going to give you everything you need once you get to the other end of the process. So I think that's the most important part. I think having the foundation is always the most important part, so that'll be like your
Right.
soil, your grass, your all that kind of stuff. That's always got to be the best that it can be, best quality it could be, because that's how you're going to get the best vegetables. If you've got a really nutrient dense garden and you've got some good manure in there and green manure and hay and this and that and the other, and some biochar, and you've done all that kind of stuff, then you're going to have something that performs all the time, year round, without having to till all the time, without having to work the soil, that kind of thing. So I think that's probably the most important for anyone, especially if you're starting off in gardening or doing anything like that.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
As far for the seeds, the seed part, so I wild foraged within this big city of that we live close to, I suppose. I took a bunch of honey locust pods,
Mm.
and I germinated them the way that was recommended to me. Like, I did some research, and it's like blah blah blah, did the process, and I shot like a
Yep.
little video about it or whatever. I probably had 150 seeds
Mm-hmm.
that I attempted to start, and right now I have 25 growing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
25 out of 150, and it grows here. Like,
Yeah.
I got it from like 35 miles away, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
it's not that far, and it's like I did everything I was supposed to, and just, I mean, that's not a very good rate of return. The other thing it reminded me of was your soil temperatures and air temperatures. There was our last frost date here is like first week of June, I want to say, like June 7th probably. And a couple years ago we got some warm, like let's say the end of May was probably like in the 70s or something like that. It would be had been like kind of cold and raining, blah blah blah, and then all of a sudden it was just like nice for like a whole week. And so everybody around here, you could tell like they were like planning in their garden. Guess what happened the following week? We got snow. And so I'm like, haha.
Yep.
Pay attention to last frost date, because like my wife's like, well, should we be planting? I'm like, not yet.
No.
Not yet. There's a reason there's a last frost date. There's because of the potential to
that's
for it
the
to
issue.
freeze or snow or
and that's the issue I'm kind of finding this year with the garden, because all the weather forecasts have said that La Nina is going to keep going for the rest of the year. And so it's May now, and we're not supposed to have rain at all. It's supposed to be a lot drier. There's not supposed to be any green grass anywhere. And yet we've got from yesterday till another 5 days, so 6 days in totals, they forecast 10 months worth of rain. We already got 3 flood watch warnings on Friday.
what?
And you're sitting there and you're going, but this doesn't make any sense. It's also unusually slightly warmer, just slightly warmer. Like at this point in time, even though it's a subtropical area, the winter gets cold. Like, you can wear a long sleeve top or a hoodie or whatever it might be, and pants. Now it's because it's just that slightly little bit warmer and slightly little bit humid. You're wearing a t-shirt and you'll just start sweating. So the weather is particularly unusual this year because of La Nina, and I think that that's having an impact on the garden, because at the moment I've got an issue with the garden with this voracious little rat who's going in there and eating all my habaneros. That's the only thing I've got left in there growing. And there's a lot of flies that are coming up in the garden, which is, I don't know why. So I haven't done any autumn planting yet, just because I don't know what's happening with the garden. Something is happening, and I think it's because of, external weather issues.
Sure. Okay. So what have you tried that failed or hasn't worked well for you?
Roosters. I don't like roosters.
Why is that?
Because I get very upset when they get ravenous with my hens. And even though I know it's,
nature,
nature, I absolutely hate them. So I refuse to have them. And I haven't had much success with starting my own or hatching my own little baby hens at this point in time. So it could just be as well because, to be honest, I really haven't put in a lot of effort. I've kind of done a little bit like, oh yeah, that'll do. Like this is kind of 80% okay, that'll do. But I haven't had much success with that. So that's why I have geese at the moment, because the geese protect the whole flock. And I don't have to have a rooster, and that's because I don't like roosters. But I know I will have to eventually have a very nice rooster. And I did have a very nice rooster, and he got killed by a wedge-tailed eagle a few years ago. And so I actually thought the way that the way he died, I actually thought he got shot with it like a shotgun, because it was sort of small and then a big hole at the back. And I thought, oh my God,
I want to look up what these things are called. What's it? It's a what eagle?
Wedge-tailed eagle. Yeah. And I thought, oh my God, someone shot my rooster. And I went in the back and I picked it up, and I thought, oh, this is weird. Anyway, a couple of days
those
passed.
Things are huge.
Huge. You could see them from the sky. Like when they're circling around, they tend to stick to a particular area because they'll know that they can get stuff from there. And then anyway, a few days passed, and I had this white chicken and I think 3 orange colored chickens. This was a couple of years ago. And anyway, I went into the paddock and I see this like dark just thing, huge, as tall as the gate, like as tall as a farm gate. And I thought, what on earth is that? Like it's not one of the dogs. It's not, nothing. What on earth is that? Anyway, I started walking really slowly towards it because I didn't know what it was. Like maybe it was a wild cat or a fox or something, that was sprawled along the length of the gate. I thought, what is that? Anyway, as I opened the gate slowly, it just opened up its wings, like just opened them, and it was like 2 meters, like the span. It was huge, and all I heard was like, the sound, as he's like airborne, and he just lifted himself up and up with a couple of flaps. He was in the top of the trees, and he had these 2 little crows that were his gang members, and he went up into the thing, and I thought, oh no, that's what killed my rooster. And then I went into the paddock, and he had decapitated my hen, the white hen. He just took her head off.
Oh my gosh.
And it was only connected by the it was like some kind of a tendon or esophagus or something. That's all it was connected to the body. It was wild.
Yuck.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
so let me see if I found a little comparison for my American listeners, and let's see if you can. I'm gonna try to share this. Let's see if I can pull this up. Come on, hide the bookmark bar. Let's see here. Share screen. Here we go. Share. And can I go full screen? I don't know how to do that. Whatever. Close enough. Okay.
Yeah.
So American bald eagle, one of the smallest eagles in the world. Australian wedge-tailed eagle, one of the largest eagles in the world. American bald eagle eats only fish. Wedge-tailed eagle hunts large mammals, including kangaroos. Is that true?
Mm-hmm. It can pick off joeys.
Serious? Holy smokes. Okay, so joey's not like a full size, like 400-pound kangaroo or whatever.
No, not the big daddios. No, it won't go for. It might try and peck one of those, but it wouldn't be able to pick it up because they'll pick things up with their claws. Yeah.
Okay. Basically a bald eagle, basically a glorified seagull. Australian wedge-tailed eagle can see infrared and ultraviolet. Only eagle in the world that attacks parachuters and paragliders. That's crazy.
Yeah, there's a mountaintop. It's about 40 minutes away from us, called Mount Tambourine, and they have a lot of paragliders that go up there. They climb to the very top of the mountain, and there's this beautiful clear gully, and they can propel themselves off there and parachute and go down, and they end up in these beautiful farmland. And there's a big sign, a warning sign there that says be careful of the wedge-tailed eagles. Yeah, they're wild.
Crazy.
We call them wedgies.
So wedgies.
Wedgies.
That means something different here.
The undies. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what we call them. You look at it. Oh, there's a wedgie. Go inside. Yeah.
Hilarious.
And even small dogs, they'll pick off small dogs and cats.
Wow.
Yeah.
That does happen. With bald eagles here, like small dogs and small cats. It's not it's not often. But are they protected, the wedgies?
Well, you wouldn't be able to shoot it or anything.
No.
Basically, no. If I think I don't know necessarily what their protection status is, but I think you'd get into a lot of strife. Same with snakes. Okay. Technically not allowed to, but that's where you just with your shovel, the dangerous ones.
Sure. I got you.
Not the
nice
ones.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want some environmental.
Not the nice one.
Yeah.
Not the nice ones. Okay. I totally forgot what we were talking about before we got talking about eagles. But that's such a huge that's a very fun fact. When I was this is another tangent. Since we're already lost anyways, whatever. When I was, I don't know, elementary school, I guess, like 4th grade, 5th grade, I was obsessed with birds of prey and raptors and stuff. And so my mom took me to the raptor center wherever we lived, and they did their little showmanship, had the eagle fly around and grab something, and hawks and all these things. And so this is kind of a fun little oh yeah, eagles are cool. Kind of a throwback,
yeah.
Bald eagles are cool, but wedge-tail are way awesome. Wedgies
are full on. Yep. I'll teach you some Australian slang. Don't you worry.
I'll have to come visit. I'll bring my whole family down, and we'll just come visit, and then I'll just start talking Australian by the time I get back to the States.
You will. You'll come back and you'll be like, "No worries, mate," and everyone will go, What is he saying? What?
You got funny looking chooks.
Yeah, they'll be like, "What's a chook? Oh, don't be a buffhead." Yeah, that's
just
true.
just a book, the book of like translations and stuff.
Yes, yes. That's
So
not a bad idea.
so to bring this back on track, what's been the biggest challenge in homesteading that you faced?
I think before that story that I was telling you about, like when we had that big flood and I was by myself and all that kind of thing. I think that's always a challenge. Like, doesn't matter how many times you do it, doesn't matter how prepared you are for it. There's still a lot of apprehension when there's a big weather event coming. And like we said before, the weather events that we have here are wild, like they're wild.
Yeah,
So when they're coming, you've just got this, you just think, oh, here we go, here we go, here we go. I've got to be turned on for this. Like, I've got to be switched. I've got to be ready to go because anything can happen. We haven't had to be evacuated yet, like because of a weather event, but that's always in the back of your head, that you're going to have to be evacuated. Where are you going to put your hens? Where are you going to put your ducks? Where are you going to put your horse, your cow, your this and your that? And thankfully, we live in communities and areas, I suppose, that they're kind of used to that. Like, where you can go if you get inundated with water, where you can take your horse, or who you can call, who can come and pick up your other animals, or whatever it might be. So I think that's the challenge, like in terms of, I suppose, physically or something that impacts your day to day. I think the next challenge probably will be the difference between the people that are genuine homesteaders that, homestead because that's the lifestyle that they want to live. Like, I consider homesteading a lifestyle ideology. Like, you can have someone that just, let's say, cans their own food and grows their own veggies, and then you'll have someone that's like on the completely other side, who's like ready for, anything can happen. They've got a bunker, they've got this, they've got that. So I don't think that it's like that you can only have these 5 skills and that makes you a homesteader. I think that it's a spectrum. You've got any level of involvement in any of these different things, and you can pick and choose. You can be like, oh, I like canning, so I'm going to can, but I like, I want to be able to know how to shoot something, so I've got this skill, and I want to be able to know how to hunt, and I've got this skill. I want to be able to know how to, skin a carcass, whatever. So you've got all these different skills. So
right.
one thing that I think that's going to emerge is that there's going to be a lot more people that don't actually subscribe to the ideology and the lifestyle, and they just want to live on the big property and have the ornamental animals and not really do anything else. And I think that, like, I don't want to call it like fake homesteaders, but it kind of feels a little bit like that, like people that are
A little
only
bit.
that don't actually subscribe to the lifestyle the way that other people do. And I think trying to find genuine homesteaders, like with genuine skills, is going to be harder in the future, because I also think that homesteading should be a collaborative measure. And I think that particularly if you get into a good community, a good homesteading community, that's a community that should be able to help each other and that should be able to share their skills. So I might not know how to, you know, take the skin off a hunted animal, but you might know, and that's something that I can be like, okay, Matt can teach me, or until I learn, Matt can take care of that. But I'll
Sure.
do all the egg collection, like, or I'll provide all the vegetables in the winter, whatever it might be. So, like, I think that there's a bigger opportunity for cooperation between homesteading communities, and I think that that's potentially going to weed out the legitimate and the not really so legitimate homesteading communities. But I think that genuinely people that are homesteaders have such an important set of skills, whatever it might be, however they've learnt them, whether it's an inherited skill, whether it's generationally learnt, whether it's something they've taught themselves. I think that that's a really, really important, I suppose, like, lifestyle and skills that they're going to continue to adhere to. And so I think that, like, I suppose you could call it ideologically, I think that's where there will be a little bit of a change as well, because you're going to have, especially all those people that moved out. I don't know if it happened over there, but here, the minute they said everyone's working from home, people were selling up in the metropolitan areas and the cities and going out and buying these properties in the country.
Same.
And then, that it was all working from home, working from home. And now they're saying, no, everyone has to come back. So these people are like, well, what am I going to do now? And they don't have a skill to run a farm, whether it's a big agricultural farm, whether it's a hobby farm, whether it's just enough to supplement them not having to work a job, like sell eggs, make soap, do this, do that, whatever it might be that you can supplement your lifestyle so you can live in your homestead. They don't have those skills and they don't want to learn them. They just want it to be out there in the bush and, have their peace and quiet. So I think that there will be a little bit of that coming up where you will have like the genuine people that want to still be involved and not. But I think that the people that are true homesteaders, if they continue their truth and live their truth and continue doing things the way that they do, I think that they will be fine. And I think that they'll be able to continue to live their lives the way that they want without judgment. I think sometimes if you say you're a homesteader, particularly here as well, because they're a bit funny about if you say you're a homesteader, they're like, oh, are you, they sort of look at it like you're different to other people. But I think I'd rather be
Kind of
different
like,
than be the same.
why?
Yeah, it exactly
Is it
that.
kind of like, I'm a homesteader.
Yeah,
Why are you a homesteader?
that's right. That's right. And like, but what do you achieve? Like, you can just go to the shop and buy, tinned corn, or you can
There's
just
a
go to the
little bit
shop
of a
and buy bread.
stigma. Like,
Yeah,
there's a little bit of a stigma here too. Like, oh, I'm so glad that I spent the last 4 months growing these tomatoes and saved myself $3.99 when I could have just went to the store. Like, there's a little bit
yeah,
of an attitude like that, but those people, they just, we, for the most part, we just write them off like as
yeah,
like a community. Just like, if that's your attitude, you don't get it. Like,
yeah.
you just don't get it. And
That's right. That's right.
like when you're ready, we'll help you. Because like
That's right.
the thing that I've noticed the most in doing these interviews, people in like, they just love helping other people. They want
Yeah,
to share all the knowledge that they can. They want to, be there like physically if they can. Like,
yeah,
hey, let me help you.
yeah.
It's really, really crazy
Yeah.
that
I mean, if we didn't have our neighbors living where we live, we'd be buggered because our neighbors are sometimes our first port of call before the
sure.
SES, before the fire brigade, before the police, before anybody can come out to help you, before the snake catcher, because some areas have snake catchers. um if my husband's away and working and there's a giganto snake and I'm terrified and he can't get to me, guess who I'm calling my neighbor and being like, hey, please help. I don't care what you do, but please help. There's a big snake and I'm scared,
Sure.
whatever it might be. So, and not just that, but like, my thing is like, your neighbors are your best spies. Like, they are the best
Oh
spies. They
yeah.
are so observant. They know everything. Our neighbors over the road, even though we don't necessarily talk to them, I mean, when I mean over the road, like, they're 10, 20 acres away, right? But they're still over the road, but they will know, oh, wait a minute, that car is not the post van, and that's not a regular delivery that they get, and I've never seen that car there before.
Mm-hmm.
And within a few seconds, you're getting a message, hey, is everything okay? Are you all good? Do you need someone to come there? Do you need someone to be with you? Is everything okay? And most often you're just saying, oh yeah, I've just sold something on FB Marketplace or whatever it might be. I'm fine. I've sold something on the advert or whatever it might be. But people keep a genuine eye out for you and your property and your animals. If they know that you're not going to be there or something's happened and you're in an emergency and they need to come and take care of your horse or whatever it might be, they'll come and do that and there's no questions asked. So I think
Right.
that makes a huge difference. And like, I'd rather be part of a community that's like that I know I can rely on, than one that's going to judge me for whether it takes me 2 days to make my sourdough or whether I go to the bakery to buy my sourdough. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So there's definitely a little bit of that here, which I'm hoping doesn't stay around for long. I hope
Same.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like the guy across the street, I call him the one man neighborhood watch because he's so. I said it to his face too, and he laughed. But like it used to, coming from the suburbs, right? Like, I'm
Mm,
not from Montana. I'm from Minneapolis, so it's just like it's like a big metropolitan
yeah.
crap hole these days. But so I just wasn't used to it,
Mhm.
and it was kind of annoying at first. But like now that, like, oh, I know that he's watching. Like, I
Mhm.
know, not like weird. Like, let's
No.
not get weird, but it's just like, um, given how crazy things are lately, especially in the cities,
Mm.
like, why would you not want that, like, kind of
Mhm.
vigilance from your neighbors?
Yes.
Like, you can only do so much on your own. Like, community is where it's at.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And I think that more of that will happen. as homesteading continues to evolve. I think it's one of those things that is potentially here anyway, is kind of evolving. I think there was always homesteaders, right? But I think that they didn't really want to be vocal about it because they'd be the kooky ones, like they'd be the people that would be looked at as the fringe members, or the ones that are a little bit
Mm-hmm.
strange, and they live a little bit strange, and they have these weird ideas about life. But I think that gap has narrowed somewhat, because I think that there is more homesteaders that are being quite vocal about the fact that they're homesteaders, and they're not afraid to say, yeah, I'm a homesteader and I do this and I do that. And I hope that that continues, because I think that will be really, really important for the community.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah, it's an easy way to connect. Like we're going to something for Mother's Day tomorrow. It's like kind of like a farmers market, makers market
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. And my wife was like, "Hey, you should bring our business cards so you can, maybe do
Yes.
some more interviews and have more connections and whatnot."
Yeah.
People that just want to talk to you about homesteading and making
Yeah.
stuff and
Yep.
whatever. So
Yeah.
I thought, hey, that's a good idea.
Yeah. Just
So
leave your card strategically, at this booth and this booth.
yeah, right.
Contact Matt for podcast interviews.
Yeah. So what do you think we should do? So
Yeah.
you mentioned traditional skills.
Yeah.
What are some traditional skills that you think we should all have?
All of them. All of them.
Everyone should
All
have
of them.
all traditional
I
skills.
mean, things like bushcrafting and stuff, some people just won't have the ability to bushcraft,
You mean
I
just
probably,
like kind of making a shelter from
yeah,
natural materials, like in the
yeah,
woods, kind of like
yeah,
that
like
YouTube
I
channel
probably
that blew
wouldn't,
up?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
wasn't he in Australia?
who?
Oh
The
man,
guy,
oh I forgot his name. Primal something.
oh, yeah, I know that. Yeah. He's actually in Queensland, I think. That
Really?
guy. Yeah, somewhere in tropical Queensland, like north of where we are. Um, I mean, that stuff I think is more for people that really want to live that lifestyle, right? Like if you want to be able to be like, yeah, I'm going out into the bush for a month and I'm just going to live on my, what I'm going to hunt and shoot and fish and whatever, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to build my own shelter and blah, 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 right? I think that's amazing. But I think that you have to be a certain person to do that. But
Right.
I think like basically any homesteading skill, like at the moment, like I remember I said to you, my grandmother's 95 years old and she is brilliant. But if I say to her, can you give me your famous bread recipe or your famous pastry recipe or whatever it might be, she
Mm-hmm.
can't tell you. She'll say, put this much, flour, put this much water, and I'm saying, how much is that? Is that a cup? Is that a metric cup? Is it an imperial cup? How much is that? Is it 250 mil? 250 grams? How much? And so I think that there's a lot of skill and knowledge in our older generations that we're going to lose, that we just don't have. So, my grandmother, for example, has never bought seeds. She's never bought seeds. Everything that she's grown from other vegetables that she's got from someone in the
You
community, or
you say that, and like
yeah,
now that makes a lot of sense. Like, why would she? Why would she
right?
buy seeds?
Never
Like,
ever bought seeds, any of her fruits and I don't know, like she is just managed to find her way around. So, and then so
yeah.
she'd have this garden, and then this garden would, create all this food. So then, okay, how am I going to store all this food? Because now I've got 10 kilos of tomatoes and I can only eat one in a sandwich. What am I going to do with the rest? Okay, I'm going to make tomato, pasta sauce, or I'm going to dehydrate that and make marinated, like sun-dried tomatoes,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm going to cannot wait to get myself on a freeze dryer. I'm looking at the harvest right, the freeze dryer, but my only concern is because it would have to be imported from the US. If I needed spare parts and stuff, it might be a little bit of a challenge for me, to get spare parts,
Sure.
whatever. But I'm so
Buy two.
into yeah, buy two, right? But I'm so
They're cheap,
into
right?
this. Well, no, they're
I'm
expensive. By the
kidding.
time,
I'm kidding.
do you know how much they would cost to bring it here?
But I
Almost
thought
$8,000.
I was gonna guess I could probably get one for $3,000 or $4,000,
Yeah.
but
About
at least
8,000, and
once.
it takes months, and then I don't know if it gets converted over here or over there, but then they have to convert, the power, It's like 7.5, 8 grand by the time of the anyway.
Oh my
I
gosh.
know, but I really want to get one. But do you know what I mean? Even having access to a machine like that, where you can be like, okay, I've got 10 kilos of tomatoes, I'm going to freeze dry them and pulverize them and make stock or whatever it might be. So people don't have that skill. People don't have canning skills. People don't have skills even in terms of like planning and stockpiling. They don't have skills in how to do multiple things with like one thing. Like the tomatoes is an example, but you have so many vegetables that are like that. That you can either can them or preserve them in some way or store them in a certain way, so that when it does come down to it, you are not relying on the supermarket or the fruit shop or whatever it might be, but you are relying on your own stores from food that you've created yourself. Like my ultimate goal, and I'm slowly getting there, but my ultimate goal is that eventually my stockpile will be made up of the things that I've grown and the things that I've actually manufactured and done myself. So things like that, things like my dad makes all our bacon, smoked bacon, smoked hocks,
That's awesome.
sausages, pork neck. He does venison as well. He does all of that stuff, and he basically has a smokehouse at his place, and he does everything: pork belly, everything, everything, everything. So this meat is the cleanest meat you can ever have. It's just cured in plain salt, not curing salt, not any preservatives, nothing. It's just for us, obviously. Like, it's not like my dad sells it or anything, but that skill is such an important skill, and I would love to
Oh
learn
yeah.
that skill from my dad. Like, because that's something that he does, and I don't know how to do it. I know in theory how to do it, but I haven't actually gone through the steps and done it myself. So I think anything like that. I think even when it comes to like hunting and hunting your own food, or even if you're not hunting, if you're pasture raising, chooks or pigs or whatever it might be, learning how to process a carcass, learning what goes into, getting that meat ready for your family to put in the freezer or that kind of thing. So all of those skills are skills that I think um, when convenience came in, have gone. I actually saw an Instagram post the other day, and I'm paraphrasing, but one of the sort of pictures that this profile that I was looking at had, it said something like, "We lost our skills when we turned to convenience." And I think that
Mm-hmm.
all of those things are so true. Like I said before, yeah, I could probably go to the bakery and spend $5 and get a beautiful loaf of bread. Yep, that's great, but and that'll take me a couple of minutes, compared to it's going to take me 2 days by the time I fold my own sourdough, by the time I let it, ferment, and then by the time I bake it, that's a 2-day process. So you can't just go, oh, okay, I want a piece of sourdough now. You've got to plan for that 2 days ahead. You're going to have a piece of sourdough for breakfast, on the weekend or whatever it might be. So I think that those skills are the ones that are dying out. And I think that, like, when it comes to like my parents' generation, like my parents know those skills, but then they migrated to Australia, and then everything became push button and easy access. And then they went,
Mm-hmm.
why am I going to do, why am I going to take 2 days to bake a loaf of bread, but I could just hop to the bakery and do it. So that's what I think traditional skills are, like understanding why you need to ferment food, understanding why you need to can food, understanding how you need to process food, store food, rotate food, all that kind of stuff, processing carcasses, hunting for them, whatever it might be. I think those skills they're not taught enough. People are afraid of them. People are not being encouraged to learn those skills. People are not being encouraged to understand and respect those skills. And I think that that's where generally as society we fall down, because people that are relying on others for their safety, security, food, clothing, employment, whatever it might be, are the ones that are going to get swallowed up by the beast at the end of the day, because they're not going to be able to have those skills, to survive.
Right.
Like I mentioned that flood before. If I didn't know how to be resilient, if I didn't know how to implement a bunch of different things in my plan, I wouldn't have survived 4 or 5 days with no electricity and no running water and all that kind of thing. But I did. I survived. And now I can look back at it and go, yeah, you know what? I'm super proud that I did that, because it just proved that you can put me in any situation and I'll get out of it, with the hair on my head still intact. So I think that those kinds of skills, even something simple as baking a loaf of bread, even
Mm-hmm.
something as simple as baking a loaf of bread and understanding that process, even that's gone, you know. So I think that people need to just be more in tune and understand those processes a lot more, and why we need them. because they don't have them anymore. They don't have those skills anymore. And if it weren't for homesteaders running little workshops and getting together as a community to teach each other things, we'd lose them. The same as the generational information that we're going to lose when our grandparents one day pass away and move on.
Agreed. I think
Yeah.
it's a lot of mindset why
Mm.
people don't have these skills. Like it's scary to think about. Like and it's uncomfortable,
Yeah.
that you mean I might have no water
Mm.
or be able to use the bathroom or, provide my own food for 5 days because I'm stuck in my house. Well, now that's, like, and DoorDash can't get here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do I do? Like, well, you kind of should have thought about that at least 4 days ago.
That's
And,
right.
you know,
Yeah.
so like, about the convenience, like modern societies, like way too like convenient, but in our
Mm.
convenience, we are so vulnerable. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of the same thing about, like privacy and security on
Mm.
your inconvenience, like on your phone. Let's say, like, I hate having
Yes.
like an Android phone or whatever, but it may be better than Apple, maybe not. I don't know. They're probably in a tie, but the fact that I have it's just uncomfortable, but it's too convenient, and I'm honestly like I share files all the time. I take notes all the time. So like, it's just be like a learning curve to like, trying to switch how I operate, day to day, doing something other than using my smartphone and all of Google's crap for, how I basically uh, run this thing. So
Mm. And even
it's the same with
imagine.
food.
Yeah, even imagine, like, because my husband tried to do that, a bit of an experiment. He went and bought this phone, cost him $30. It was not connected to Wi-Fi, not connected to the internet. It was about this big. It was literally
Mm-hmm.
just phone calls. And he said, "I'm going to have a detox, from social media, from everything." Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, "Okay, great." So he was in the hardware store, and he calls me up. He said, "Oh, can you check, such and such thing if it's cheaper on the internet than at the hardware store?" So I was
That's
like, "Yeah."
cheating.
Yeah, so I was like, "Yeah, I'll check for you." So I check, and then I send him like the link on his phone, and he's like, calls me back. He's like, "I can't access it." And I was like, "Why?" He's like, "It's not connected to the internet." I was like, "Oh, bugger." And he goes, "Oh, can you send me the such and such, the other hardware store?" He's like, "I'll call them and see if they've got it." I was like, "Yeah, okay." So again, I did it on my phone and I sent it to him, but it sent it as a link, right? So he couldn't press the link, and it didn't allow him to just copy the number without the link behind it, like onto the phone. He lasted 3 days. And he was like, "I can't do it." He's like, "I need the map,
Sure.
when I'm driving around." He often like checks for other bargains and deals, as he's going. He's like, "I literally couldn't do it. I couldn't even detox for sort of 3 or 4 days because everything was either in a hyperlink or some other kind of thing, and then I couldn't work without it." So sometimes, like, we're stuck in those scenarios where things like internet or phones or whatever it might be, we just can't do our work without that technology, or we just can't do
Sure.
it without that thing. But I think that what probably, and this is probably something that homesteaders just naturally do, is you look at what you can change, and you look at what you can't change. And if you have absolutely no ability to change something, move on, leave it as it is, and go and
Mm-hmm.
have an impact on the thing that you can change. And if the thing that you can impact and change is your food, your security, your self-sufficiency, and your reliance, then do it. Because at least that way you'll know, well, at least I'm prepared, and I can do this.
Yeah, and you got to take the value of your time into that as well. Like,
Mm.
can't like, that's like touching on political, and that's intentional that I did
Mm.
that. But like,
Mm.
that's maybe a topic for another day. But but so I was going to ask you, what
Mm.
traditional skills do you have? But I think it'd be a shorter list if I asked you, what traditional skills do you need to work on still?
I need to learn how to skin a carcass and process a carcass, because I don't know how to do that. I
Of
need
what animal?
Of any animal, whether it's
Oh,
deer
okay.
or pig or cow. Chook I've done, but I haven't done
Okay.
the other three. And I would just feel more comfortable with myself. My
Sure.
dad has always done that. That's always been his thing, that's his thing, but I want to do it. So that is definitely the skill that I have to work on, and it's something like to the point that I'm even potentially considering going and doing like a proper butchering course, like a short course or whatever it might be, just so I can learn that skill. Because I've sort of probably fumbled my way through some of it, but I think it's an important skill to have, and especially once we do get out onto our bigger property, when we make that move, I would like to be able to do that stuff myself. So that's a skill I need to have, that I need to learn. Yeah.
That's a good one. That's
Yeah.
I mean, large game processing. That's a good skill because that's a
Yeah.
it can provide a lot of meat. So
It can, especially like where we're looking to go. There's a lot of wild deer, wild goat, lots of kangaroos, wild boar. And so even if you're not necessarily consuming that for yourself, you've got, you know, raw meat for the dogs, that you can
right.
process and, have that at least for your dogs. So I think it's an important skill, even if it's not feeding us, it's going to save us some money and be able to feed the dogs and, give them some good quality raw food. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, wrapping up here, what would you
It
what
was a
would you
mosquito.
tell people what would you tell people that wanted to get started homesteading?
Just do it. Just start straight away. Don't be afraid of starting. Um, Even if you think, oh, I'm not going to be able to do this, or I need to have X, Y, Z before I do this. I think that that's just procrastinating and delaying the process. There's a lot of things that you'll learn based on your, regional area where you are. You'll learn to do things the way that the locals do it, or you'll learn about, things specific, like locally specific to you, skills that you need to have, or things that are, for your area. So I say just jump in feet first and don't be afraid to jump in. Like if you're, let's say, wanting to move from the suburbs to a homestead property, and it's daunting because it's a scenario like what we have where you're only connected to the electricity, let's say, and you're on town, you're on your own tank water and that. Well, do some research about it, read up about what it means to maintain, such a thing, and the properties that you look at, make sure that they have all the infrastructure ready to go, like the downpipes and the catch and the, filters and
Mm-hmm.
all this kind of stuff. So I think that just get into it, basically, like just jump into it feet first, because you will learn along the way, and you'll also learn the way that's most appropriate for you. So there's no point in learning about, pigs if you're never going to have pigs on your farm. If you're only going to have chooks and ducks and geese, well, you need to learn about chooks and ducks and geese. If you're going to be living in a property that's got a flood zone, learn about, what that means. How often does it flood? How fast does the flood water move on? Where does it move to? What floods? Where do you get sandbags? How can you store things long term? That kind of stuff. So, I'm not saying go into it blindly, do your research, do everything that you can, but just don't be afraid to take that next step, I suppose.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's not that bad to like learn as you go too. Like keep all those things
Yeah.
in mind. Like I knew she like for people listening, I know she just threw a bunch at you. Don't let that don't let
Heaps.
that like turn you off. But like, like we talked about community earlier, neighbors are a great resource too. Like,
Mm,
for where I don't it's probably similar to where you are,
mm.
where we live, people leave you alone,
Yeah,
like because they figured you moved out here because you
for a
want to be
reason.
left alone.
Yeah,
So if you want that community, reach out,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
that's been fantastic for us.
Mm.
We've gotten not like big help, just every day, like little things help,
Yeah.
just by giving away a couple dozen eggs every now and then, like,
Mhm.
hey, chickens lay too much, here you go, here you go, here you go. And um that's just it's super simple, and like people appreciate it. So
Yeah, absolutely. And you also don't know what struggles people are potentially having. Like
hmm
maybe they've moved out, or they're recently separated, or something's happened in their life, and maybe that carton of eggs is actually going to help feed them for a week. Like I think it's just being mindful of the fact that if you have an abundance, share it with others. And I think that if people can get onto that mindset of sharing their wealth, their knowledge, their abundance, their skills, I think as a community, doesn't matter where we go, You know, like I could come to the US, I could go to Europe, I could go to New Zealand, or I mean, New Zealand's different because we're kind of cousins, but do you know what I mean? Like, you know, you could go to any other place where there's other homesteaders and not feel like you're in such a, you know, bizarre space that you can't find your feet. You know, that, you know, if you said to me, oh, can you go saddle up that horse? I'm not going to be like, oh, what's a saddle? How do I do that? You know, or if I say to you, hey, can you go and, you know, till that yard? You're not going to be like, oh, I don't know how to use this tool, you know? So I think it's a little bit of that as well, like just, you know, making sure that you've got everything that you need to be able to flourish for yourself, but not being selfish and helping others flourish, because as a community, we will pull each other up together. We're not going to pull each other up if we've got ego and selfishness and people that are just coming in and doing things for themselves. Those people tend to not stay around long anyway. You know, they sort of breeze through the community kind of thing. But I think that if we can lift each other up, then it's better than not helping each other at all. Yeah.
Well said. Perfectly said.
Yeah.
So do you want to tell people where they can find you, your Instagram and your YouTube?
Yeah. So
anything
it's
else?
all the same name. So Life on Milo's Farm is on Instagram, and the same on Facebook. Although I don't really use Facebook that often, I prefer Instagram. I've just recently fixed up my blog, so that's also lifeonmilosfarm.com, and same name on YouTube, Life on Milo's Farm. I've been a little bit slack posting lately just because we've had so much crazy weather and all that kind of stuff, but I generally try and post each week, and it's just, you know, homesteading projects, things that we're doing around, if we're going to any events or anything like that. We do that kind of stuff. So it's all over Instagram predominantly. And then if you're interested in my homesteading business, which is a natural artisan soap and natural skincare, that's called Homestead Soapery. And they're all
Nice.
all the different links are within, you know, the profiles. So you'll find a link to one or the other in those profiles on Instagram. So that's where you can find me.
Awesome. I'll have links for all your stuff in the show notes.
Awesome. Thank you. It's been wonderful chatting to you.
Yes, it's been wonderful. I appreciate you giving me the time to just BS and learn more about prepping and homesteading and crazy life in Australia.
You're very welcome. And maybe next time we could do like more of like a walking one.
Yeah, that
I
would be
can show
sweet.
you around the property, and if there's any wedgies, I can show you the wedgies.
Duck and cover.
Duck and cover.
Well, I appreciate everyone listening, and be sure to check out her Instagram and her YouTube and her website. So
Awesome. Thanks, mate. See you next time.
Yeah, we'll see you. Wow, what an interview. We could have talked for another couple hours. Beyond the bonus content is to be posted the next few weeks. But thanks for watching, everyone. Please like, subscribe, and most importantly, share this video. Check out our website, farmhoplife.com. Sign up for our email list to be notified when new videos, interviews, and podcasts are available. On the website, you can read, watch, and listen to learn more about us and our mission. Go to farmhoplife.com, and on the homepage, click About Us. You'll find a YouTube playlist for our What is Farm Hop Life series. There's a short version, which is about 60 to 100 second videos, and then the full-length episodes, different playlists, so you can figure out which one you have time for. You can email me anytime, matt@farmhoplife.com. I'm always looking for new people to interview. If you'd like to come on to talk about homesteading, farming, food security, homeschooling, alternative building methods, whatever you want to talk about, pitch it to me at farmhoplife.com/guest. Go feed yourself.